We're at that order of business of bills on third reading and final passage. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 7. We have amendments.
House Bill 7, sponsored by Representative Zawanit Serdan, underage marriage amendments, an act relating to domestic relations being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Representative Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring you third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 7 and ask for your favorable consideration. I will withdraw this at the appropriate time. Members, I'm not the smartest one in this chamber. I've proved that on numerous occasions, but this is a chance for us all to help me understand something in the Constitution. If you go to Article 3, Section 27, it talks about special and local laws prohibited. It says, if I may, Mr. Speaker, it says the legislature shall not pass local or special laws in any of the following enumerated cases, and it enumerates 37 cases specifically, and you go down about an inch on that category that it says one of the cases is declaring any person of age. And what I'd like to have is a little conversation to help me understand that we are not declaring a person of age that is contrary to what's prohibited here. So those of you that are a lot smarter than me, which means there is about 61 of you, help me to understand this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Would anybody else like to, Chairman Washut, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When we talk about special laws and making someone of age, that would be if I were to come in here and make a motion that my teenage son be declared emancipated. One person by name, we're going to emancipate Art's kid, okay? That would be a special law. But to emancipate a class or to set an age that everybody above 18 is an adult, everybody below 18 is not, that's not a special law. I hope that sits well with the lawyers in the room, but I think that's how we define it in Wyoming.
Would anybody else like to speak to this amendment, really this bill, frankly? This is a delete the enactment clause bill. Representative Larson.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm struggling with this bill a little bit. This is one of those that you follow and you just don't know how you're going to vote till the third reading. And where I'm hung up is the good country lawyer that hails from the north here brought up that statute, the area statutes that where we recognize that a 16-year-old individual has the ability to enter into some contracts. And then we're coming over to this part and we're taking away for somehow we're saying they don't have the capacity to enter into a contract of marriage. And I'm probably missing some bits and pieces of that, but if somebody could put that together and help me understand why we would allow them to think that they had the capacity to enter into contracts in one place and not in another place would help me maybe know a little more of how I should vote.
Anybody else for their first time? Representative Jennings.
So members, I've thought a little more about this bill, and I want to point out a couple of more things to you. Obviously, I view this bill as an overreach of government. Children are our most precious charge by God. And I'm aware that many in our society do not take this charge as seriously as they ought to. I think that's probably an understatement at times. And that grieves me, that we have troubles in our society that get to this point. But the state reaching into families that do take their charge seriously is unacceptable to me. It's a matter of freedom. And this bill will not change poor behavior. It won't. But it could easily change the society's outlook towards a good behavior of personal responsibility. Not everybody's going to make those right choices. They didn't make the right choices to get necessarily in this particular circumstance. But just because something is lawful or unlawful does not make it moral. This is a decision that should be made by the families that are involved. They're the closest. As much as possible, families are the ones that should be making these decisions, not by the state. The state has a long history of less than stellar results in some of our endeavors. Our war on drugs, glad to see we won that finally, or not. This morning we were talking about suicide. I'm glad to see we finally won that one, or not. Alcohol, tobacco, on and on and on. Marriage has long been recognized as the foundation of our society and the pillar of our society. Let's not change our respect and our support for this institution because of 20 cases in a year. Now, that doesn't mean those 20 cases are not important. I would disagree a little bit with the chairman. It's true, it's not for one person, but it is for 20 cases. That's a very small group of people, and not all of those people, even if we take the statistics that we heard the other day, which I would question, but even if we took those as a reality, that's not all 20. So please vote no on this bill. This is an interesting battle that we're having for the morality of our families. And there are complications that come with letting the state get into our families any more than we absolutely have to. So vote for freedom. Vote no on the bill.
Representative Storer for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Currently in Wyoming, you could be married younger than you can legally consent to sex. Think about what that means. A man rapes a child. Is the man charged with rape? Not if the child is forced to marry him, which is often the case. Our laws currently create a legal loophole that allows men to skirt statutory rape charges and allows that same abuse to continue under a marriage license. While some might question some of the statistics, I really spent the last couple of days doing a bit of a deeper dive on this issue, which I really did not know a lot about. And there are a number of organizations out there working to bring the marriage age up across all of our states, across all of the US. It is estimated that 300,000 children were married between the years of 2000 and 2018. That's almost 17,000 a year. So this is not just a small problem. And most of those are marriages that occur between an adult man and a young woman or a young girl. Our clerk told us a story last night. 2 years ago, a 60-year-old man walked into the clerk's office in Teton County. We actually do marry the most number of people as a county in the state. He asked for a marriage license. With him was a 16-year-old girl. There was nothing the clerk could do other than to issue the license. But this legislation would make a difference. It would allow for a judge. The judge would need to approve the marriage. He or she could interview each of the parties and make sure that this was truly consensual. And a written or verbal consent from her parents would also be required. Right now, that's not the case. These are common sense safeguards that can help protect our children. Unfortunately, parents or guardians can often be complicit in marrying off these children. They're often raised in abusive or neglectful homes, and that abuse continues in the marriage. If statistics don't matter, I just thought I would share with you just some very brief comments from a girl who was forced to marry at the age of 14 because she had become pregnant. After she was married, she wrote, "I juggled high school, keeping house, and trying to keep myself and my baby alive around a man who grew more violent every day. I begged my parents for help and told them he would kill us. Their response was that I was a married woman now and had to figure it out for myself." This didn't happen in a far-off country. I was raised in an upper middle-class suburban home in the Midwestern US. My family looked a lot like yours probably does. I truly believe it's time for Wyoming to join states like Arkansas and Utah and South Carolina. Let's not be the last one to put a floor on marriage. I hope you'll join me in opposing this amendment and supporting the bill. Thank you very much.
Representative Pendergraft for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First for second.
Representative Lawley for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The legislature was designed in part to be a constitutional process of balancing interests. It's one of the hardest things we have to do, and to me, this bill is a representation of how hard that can be. And I think this debate is a good one to have and a good practice for us to do it well. Because often we can reduce our votes to scorecards when a conversation would be better. And I think having hard conversations help us get better at balancing this interest. I believe strongly in three things. I believe strongly in religious freedom. I believe strongly in parental rights. I believe strongly in child protection. They're all important, and they must be balanced on this issue, in my view. And here's why. I support religious freedom, but I also know that it is not immune from abuses. I support parental rights, but I also know that many families are broken. I believe in child protection because I have seen the devastation of abuse and neglect. I want to give you an example because I want to zero in on a particular issue that concerns me most and why I support this legislation. And that's human trafficking. I've had the privilege to sit across the table from young girls who were in halfway houses in the Sunshine State that had been rescued out of human trafficking, and to hear their stories. And they were, as you can imagine, heartbreaking, soul-crushing, and unbelievable in certain instances. I grieved with them. I saw their loss of innocence and their lack of hope for their future. One in particular told me that it was her father who was addicted to drugs, who sold her into human trafficking to an older man. These stories are real, and they are far too frequent, more than we will ever understand. I've read numerous articles about the targeting of states that have no minimum age, that people go into those states deliberately for the purpose of finding and grooming young girls and marrying them, and that marriage becomes the slamming door of a cell for those women. And that's why this issue matters to me. It matters to me. Are we giving up some things here? Yeah, a little bit. That's what balancing of interests ultimately does, is we have to give up some things. So for me, this tips the scale, and that's why I urge you to vote in favor of this bill.
Representative Alleman for your first time.
Mr. Chairman, first for second.
I think we have a Representative Clouston would like to speak.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
You know, we have a responsibility here. Not all parents or all guardians are good people, right? Anything we can do to protect these children, we need to do. I'm willing to give up a little bit of rights to do what I feel is the right thing to help take care of our kids. I'm going to vote no on the amendment and yes on the bill.
Representative Smith for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This issue hits a little close to home for me. I understand a lot of people wanting to solve the crisis of abuse or human trafficking, but I don't think not allowing people to get married or get married is ever going to solve abuse. For me personally, I'm the product of teenage pregnancy. My mother was 16 when she had me, and my father was 21. And my mom's friends took her to Planned Parenthood, so in theory, I should not be here today. But by the grace of God, my mom decided to tell my dad, hey, I'm expecting. And 2 weeks from the day that my dad found out that my mom was pregnant, they got married, and they have been married happily for 40 years. So with the 40-year marriage, had these laws been in place, my parents probably wouldn't have married. My father could be in jail, and then you'd have a family without being raised by a father. So there's a lot of other issues going on here as well. So I don't think this act stops abuse or human trafficking, because whether you're married or not married, people are still going to abuse people, and this doesn't solve that problem. So also the religious aspect of it is quite important for me as well. My community, there's groups of people that don't involve themselves much in the government, like a simpler lifestyle. Their children seem to be pretty mature, and so I will be voting no.
Representative Locke for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First for second, please.
Would anybody else like to speak for their first time? Would anybody like to speak for their second time prior to the bringer of the amendment? I might see somebody heading towards a mic. Oh, right there. Representative Pendergraft for your second time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is indeed a tough subject. There are a lot of factors that go into it. I want us to take a step back. I hear speakers from these podiums that like to use the phrase 30,000 feet. My fellow representative from the north of the state pointed out that many times government steps in and tries to fix issues, and yet the issues remain. To me, this is a classic case of what is the role of government. It would be great if we could just put some words on a page and end all of this. But we won't. It's still going to happen. Yes, we want to try to curb it. But when we have to go, as was suggested by another representative earlier from the west side of the state, when we have to go to government and have a judge stamp approval, I'm not real keen on the idea that that's a slippery slope. When does that end? Do I have to go to the government and get permission to put a custom license plate frame, as they do in country I was stationed to in Europe for several years? The more power we give government to interfere in people's lives and tell them what they can and can't do, the less liberty we have. I'm here and I was elected because I stand for liberty. Yes, I am aware that there are horrible problems we have to deal with, including human trafficking. And we need to be involved with that. We need to understand how that works. I just don't believe that this Band-Aid would be a good solution. Thank you.
Chairman Washit for your second time.
So we ask, what's the proper role of government? The people of Wyoming gave us our Constitution. And in Article 7, Section 20, it says the duty of the legislature to protect and promote health and morality of the people. The people gave us this responsibility to wrestle with this difficult issue today. We're not creating this, okay? We're facing a reality in the modern world. The legislature has this obligation. It's a proper role of government to define these things. It's the will of this body. The people told us to take care of these things.
Representative Storer for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to echo the representative from Detroit County's thoughts, and also thank the representative from Goshen County for telling us his story. I just think it's important to clarify that in that instance, with his parents' permission, with their parents' permission, his parents would be able to be married even under this bill, under the statute. So just to clarify, at 16, you can go and ask for permission to do so with your parents. It's just under 16, which I think is absolutely appropriate. Thank you.
Representative Jennings for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I want you to think about the other side of this for the young lady. I mean, we all have reasons to vote for or against this. What does this force that person to make the decision to? We can say, okay, well, she won't have to worry about sex trafficking, although I would argue that we won't solve that with this bill. It'll still be out there. It'll still be a problem. Now at 16, she's going to get to make a decision of whether or not she wants to be a single mother and who all that involves. She's going to get to make decisions that are going to be hard for a couple to handle, let alone a single person. And I just hate to see our institution again take away take a swipe at an institution that is the bedrock of a society, of a free society. It's been around for a long time. Is it perfect? No. This legislation won't make it perfect either. We're making legislation because of 20 people that we're putting out there a year from the age 18 and under. 20. And we're going to affect people that are going to have to make decisions. Maybe they come upon this because maybe she got pregnant. Now she's got to decide, do I want to keep that child? Or do I not want to? Do I want to raise that child on my own? Or do I want to strive towards the family that I've wanted? Personal responsibility plays into this. A lot of times we don't like that. If you're talking the crime, and I think sometimes the other side's talking the crime, listen, it's a crime. You want to up the penalty and go after the criminal, I'm with you. But don't attack this institution that has been the bedrock of Western civilization and do it all in the name of somebody that, is in a bad circumstance. Not every one of those people. We don't want those young people to have to face life in some circumstances and make some decisions that are very difficult to make, and they're even harder to make on their own. And the state's not going to be there to make all those decisions for them. They'll get to pay for a good share of it. We'll see more legislation Listen, as the state has gotten involved in things, it's gotten more costly. It has become more and more problematic. It's the old president that says, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Well-intentioned does not always make the best policy. On for the amendment, against the bill.
Any other person for their second time prior to the sponsor? Representative Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to continue this debate just a little bit before we vote on this bill in third reading. 50 years ago, my sister got pregnant in high school. She wanted to get married to her boyfriend, but with this bill, if enacted, she would have fallen below that floor. With this bill, there is no way she could have ever gotten married. But she did get married. And I could tell you that they lived happily ever after, but there were some rough spots, as I think everyone's marriage that has been married has experienced. Everyone has some difficulties. But this year, they will be celebrating their 50th anniversary. They've raised 2 good sons. They have grandchildren. And seeing those 2 now, they are so much in love still. This bill would have stopped all of that. But when they got into a difficult situation, they consulted with their parents and they decided the best thing for them was to get married. Now, is that the solution for everyone? No, I'm not saying that. But it leaves options out there for situations that we can't foresee in the future. I appreciate the debate. I'm not going to tell you to vote one way or the other because I think it's a difficult decision. But I hope we do what's best. And Mr. Speaker, I respectfully withdraw the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. We do still have amendments. And so Representative Larson JT has an amendment. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to give people a little bit of time. Go on your computer, right? Go find the bill. You'll find the amendments. It'll probably be up by now on there. And Representative Larson, I'm going to give folks a little chance to click on that before I put it to you. So, all right. I think people are getting their technology straightened out. So Representative Larson JT, and please remember to move that amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 2. The amendment just makes it effective immediately after all acts necessary to pass this. I think it's very important with the human trafficking that we have, especially along the I-80 corridor. So thank you.
Would anybody like to comment on this amendment for their first time? All right. Question having been called, all those in favor of third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 7 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 7 has passed. So we are back on the bill. And just, yes, question having been called, but I'm just going to mention something here. A good representative came up to me from the the North Country, I'll just say that, and asked me, and this has happened twice, so I'm going to mention it now before we vote. So usually the delete the enacting clause is the last amendment, but if during that course of that debate, somebody brings another amendment, then you could see what just happened. So we usually like to debate the merits of the bill last, but everybody has the right to bring an amendment during the debate. So with that, House Bill 7, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will please call the roll.
Ellerman? No. Allred? No. Andrew? Angelos? No. Banks? No. Bear. Berger. Brown. Burkhart. Byron. Chadwick. Chestick. Clauston. Conrad. Crago. Davis. Eklund. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hornock. Jennings. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Locke. Nyman. Newsom excused. Nicholas. Nemec. Northrup. Oakley. Obermueller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Sherwood. Singh. Slagle. Smith. Stiff. Storer. Strock. Stivar. Tarver. Trujillo. Walters. Ward. Washut. Western. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Zwanitzer Dan. Zwanitzer Dave. Speaker Summers. Are there any changes? Any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 36 aye, 25 no, 1 excused.
House Bill 7, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 7 has passed the House. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 41. Please, privilege, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for privilege of the floor.
Please.
I'd like to recognize one of my friends and constituents from Gillette, Wyoming. Mr. Kevin Couch came to see what we do today in the House. Thank you.
Hey! Representative Pendergraft, did you still have a privilege that you wanted to bring? Were you bringing a privilege earlier? No, you were good. I just thought while we had a break, I'd go there. All right, okay, the next bill for our consideration is House Bill 41.
House Bill 41, sponsored by Transportation. Lightweight trailers, permanent registration. An act relating to motor vehicles being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We have amendments. Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 41 and ask for your favorable consideration. And all this does, I'll just give you the quick summary, is in the bill it allows you after 6 years to be able to get a permanent license on a lightweight trailer. And what this does is says if you really want to not even jump the line, but do it from day one, you can pay a $500 fee and you'll be able to license it on day one. And I came up with that number by calculating what I estimated or guesstimated rather a lightweight trailer might cost and what it would cost you over that 6 years or cost the county. And so it's a rough average of about where I think that would end up. So it maybe not budget neutral, but pretty darn close. And again, it would just allow you to make that permanent on day one as opposed to waiting the 6 years as in the bill. Now, the other component of it is if you don't choose it on day one, you have to wait the 6 years to implement it.
Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a friendly amendment. You see my name on it. I appreciate the good member of Appropriations working with me on this. This is just a really good opportunity for our people who have these lightweight trailers that drag them through the mud to make sure they get a license plate and they can keep it for good. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Anybody else? Question having been called. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 41 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? The amendment passes. Okay, I think we have another one. Representative Tarver. Please.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I move on third reading, Amendment number 2 to the House 41, ask for your favorable consideration. This just takes it from the 1,000 to 6,000 pounds, so it encompasses a larger amount of the lightweight trailers and just making a bill better. That's all I can see. Thank you.
Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very quickly trying to grab my green book to go through here and explain why this is a bad idea. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the intent behind this.
There are no bad ideas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You are correct. Mr. Speaker, why this is, I would also say maybe just a little bit outside of the realm of the original intent of the law. The law says lightweight trailers. That's the biggest portion that we're talking about. But when we start expanding this up to 6,000 pounds, ladies and gentlemen, we actually tackled this, and it was the year before I came into the legislature. There was a law that was passed that said, hey, look, if you're going to drive trailers on the road, we're going to start taxing them by their weight because the different weights start causing different damages to the road. And if we authorize this portion, what we're doing is we're basically undermining what we've tried to do on this, which is attempting to say, hey, look, if you're going to be dragging your trailers across the road, you're going to pay for the damage that they're doing. So this was not a concern that was brought to us by the county treasurers. These larger trailers up to 6,000 pounds were not the ones that are actually costing us more to produce the license and the registration. It was these 1,000-pound trailers. They're only $30. When you split that between the county and the state, it's costing more in administrative costs to license these. These $6,000 trailers actually create a revenue stream for the state to put back into the highway fund, well, they're property tax, so they end up going to your schools and everything else. But I would strongly resist this amendment. I do appreciate the bringer trying to bring this forward, but certainly not what we heard in committee and certainly not what the intent of the original bill was. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just have a question of the good bringer of the amendment. Do we have any idea of the financial impact to the counties of this particular amendment as opposed to the last one? That's just my question. Thank you.
Representative Yin for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for the fee for the permanent registration, it appears to be $50 in the bill. Does this mean it would be cheaper to do the permanent registration than the regular registration, which I believe was $70 for the 6,000-pound trailer?
Representative O'Hearn for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you look in Chapter 3, 31.3.101, for a 1,000-pound trailer, it's $5,000 or less. That's where the county commissioners and the county clerks came to us and said, we are losing money by sending a yearly sticker out to everybody to renew your license. So that's where they came up with that price of $50. To register a 1,000 to 3,500-pound trailer, it's $30. 35 to 45 is $40, and so on. If your trailer weighs less than 6,000 pounds, it's $70 a year. And like the chairman from back here said, that we would lose a lot of money financially, and it's figured by weight of the trailer. So on and against this amendment.
Representative Davis for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, I'm in favor of this bill, and I heard somebody say that a 6,000-pound trailer would be a little rough on our highways. If that's true, we're all in a bind, you know? Thank you.
Representative Banks for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm surprised more ranchers who pull horse trailers haven't got up to stand in support of this amendment. It helps all of us out. Let's support it. Let's get our horse trailers cheaper. The counties have enough money. No, strike that I said that, but in favor of the amendment.
Anybody else for their first time? Chairman Eklund.
I'm going to have to reply to that. I was once on the Transportation Committee and kind of know the arguments on all sides of it, I think. But we've talked about this. How do we maintain a highway system that we're behind about $300 or $400 million a year in maintenance? We're not getting it from fuel tax. We're not getting it from registration fees, and the weights of the vehicles damage the road. If there were equitable way to pay for the road damage at the end of the year, I think we should be willing to do that. Wyoming will not survive without a good highway system. We will not. So I'm opposed to this. The spirit of it is good, but in theory, it just and fiscally, it's not the best thing to do.
Representative Hornock for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just something to think about. One of the things that this may do could be to increase revenue. And let me tell you how, because I don't know if you've driven on the freeways in the state. Look at the license plates on semi-trailers. The majority of license plates on semi-trailers are Idaho, if I can say that, one of the states to our west.
You're fine.
So that's where they're licensed, because Idaho has a one-time registration fee for semi-trailers. And so there are trailers sitting here in this city that are licensed in Idaho. So what may happen is people from other states will probably register those trailers here in Wyoming. We could be looking at a big source of revenue here, potentially. I'm just throwing that out there. Thank you.
Representative Larson for your first time.
Thank you. So I had some real heartburn when I used to see those trailers, particularly out in the oil field that had all those Idaho plates on, and I went growling and howling to the department and found out that those fees are come back into the state, that they don't stay exclusively in Idaho or the state where the potatoes are raised.
It's okay to name a state. Representative Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think you're hearing a gentle pushback on that we, the people, would like to have more permanent license, and we'd like to see it extended into a larger area than just light trailers. And so I'm kind of putting that bug in the department's ear. Thank you.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody else for their first time? Representative Harshman for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question for the bringer. That reference in statute on this trailer, how big is that trailer? I mean, and is that an empty weight? Seems to me this is like a 6,000 pound empty weight trailer. And so maybe you can put it in a little sixth grade language for all of us. I mean, how big a trailer would die? It's not a horse trailer. I mean, this is my guess. I see some nodding in the back. If somebody can help us with that understanding, thank you.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the bringer of the amendment? Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, not a bad idea. It's a great idea, right? So we bring these ideas forward because these are ideas that come from our constituents, and maybe the good bringer of this bill had a constituent that said, hey, I'd like to see this brought on all these trailers. What this does, this amendment, I just pulled up the Green Book, this basically eliminates all but one size of trailer from being registered every single year. The only trailer above and beyond this that would go into this would be a 6,001 pound trailer or more. So to the good representative from that loves the Broncos up there in the center part of the state, you're talking a small family trailer, right? RV trailer, something pretty decent. Could be a double axle. Most of them would probably be single axle to be this heavy. Most of those go up and above that 6,000 pound, but you could do that. The original intent behind this bill was these little ATV trailers. I'm struggling not calling a rules committee, to be honest with you, because I do think this changes the germaneness of what this bill is trying to do. To the good representative from the new representative from this county that was talking about trailers that are licensed in another state, we actually tackled this problem about 4 years ago in this body, and it is illegal to license another vehicle in another state and keep it here in this state as a residence. It's actually a crime. So we had an issue with that with Montana, Idaho, South Dakota. There was a lot of these happening, and it's actually now a punishable crime. So one of the other things that I want to bring back is this will have a financial impact. And the financial impact to the counties is going to be significant. You're talking a couple $100 every single year that these things are coming out. And by the time that this comes down, you're talking a couple $100. And with the amendment that we just put in with the good representative from the center part of the state as well, we said a one-time $500 fee. Well, that was for these single axle trailers that don't cost much to put together, or that cost much to license. Now, if we do that, we say it's a $500 fee and we're going to license a 600 or 6,000 pound trailer with that, it's going to be way more advantageous to pay that one-time $500 fee and then just go. I get it, ladies and gentlemen, nobody likes paying taxes. I get it. But we also have services that we've got to provide for. And this is a situation where the germaneness of what this amendment is trying to do is way outside the scope of what this committee even discussed, had consideration of, had testimony on, and we're seeing it in third reading. I don't think this is the right way to handle this. If we want to have this discussion later on, if we can have our friends down the hall have this discussion and we want to go to conference, let's do that. But doing this last minute, I don't think is the right way. Let's kill this amendment and let's have this discussion another time and maybe in a different bill. Thank you.
Anybody else for their second time before the bringer? Let's see. I don't see anybody. Okay. Representative Tarver, I think, bring us home.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. So lightweight is really a perspective. Depending on what kind of vehicle you drive, could be a 1,000-pound trailer or a 6,000-pound trailer. Now, I think a 6,000-pound trailer is pretty light myself, but anyway, so here's some facts, okay? 6,000-pound trailer is pretty light. Most folks in my area, we don't even license them because it's such a nuisance to go in there. It's a hassle. We're not talking big money. And there's a lot of other folks, they just go to other states to get their plates. And I would be willing to bet we'll have a revenue increase from this, in all honesty, because anyway, I'm just trying to help out some folks, and this would definitely help out ranchers and whatnot, and just simplify some things. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, question having been called. Third reading amendment, all those in favor of third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 41 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. Chairs in doubt. All those in favor stand. All right, all those opposed, please stand. How many? Okay, the amendment fails 28 to 34. House Bill 41, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Alaman? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom excused. Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanitzer Dan? Zwanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers?
Aye.
Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 61 aye, 1 excused.
House Bill 41, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected at the House, House Bill 41 has passed the House. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 73.
House Bill 73, sponsored by Representative Stivar. Annexation, vote requirement, an act relating to cities and towns being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Representative Singh, we have amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading Amendment 1 to House Bill 73. All this does is, so on page 2, line 17, after approves, insert or opposes. And I will now explain the reason why I bring this is to clarify any sort of answers that any city would be getting concerning this topic. It just clarifies the issue, so.
Representative Stivar for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, this just cleans it up from the good country lawyer that brought it up yesterday. So the landowners have to oppose or approve it in writing. So it's just a cleanup. Vote aye. Vote aye for the bill.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their Representative O'Hearn for your first time?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like I mentioned yesterday, most municipalities are not out trying to land grab. Most people, most landowners outside or inside the city limits, but outside the current municipal boundaries, will put together an improvement service district to make sure that they can come into a land area before. And many planned annexations have signed a prior agreement that any land near or contiguous to the land of the city will sign a pre-planned agreement that they will annex at a certain time when water and sewer get out to their area, and their streets and lights and curbs and gutters and storm drains all go to the right place. So all these things are usually taken care of before 5 or 6 landowners outside the city limits get their doors kicked in and said, you're going to annex. It's usually brought on by the group of landowners outside the city limits. that makes this all happen. Against the amendment, against the bill.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the bringer? Representative Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I believe this will clarify communications between individuals and the city concerning annexation. So, vote aye.
All right, all those in favor of third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 73 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The amendment passes. All right. House Bill 73 having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Allemand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Klauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Warnock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom excused. Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? I'm sorry, Winter?
Excused.
Aye.
Okay.
Wiley? Yin? Dan, was the one answer Dan? Was the one answer Dave? Speaker Summers?
No.
Are there any changes? Brown? No to aye. Olson? Aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 39 aye, 22 no, 1 excused.
House Bill 73, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 73 has passed the House. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, I think they're calling for you.
They are, but Mr. Majority, may I have a privilege of the floor?
Please, go ahead.
I will not take long. Some very dear people to me just walked in the back of this building. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to my son, Preston, his beautiful wife, Donnie, and 2 of the most adorable little women, Lucille and Evelyn Grace. Those are my kids. Thank you all. Mr. Speaker?
Just welcome to the House. Please go ahead.
I move the committee, the House resolve itself into the committee of the whole to consider House Bill number 2, and then I've changed the order slightly. We're going to consider House Bill number 93, the Omnibus Water Bill.
You have heard the Majority Floor Leader's motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. I didn't hear that. Majority Whip Western.
Committee of the Whole will please come to order. First bill for our consideration is House Bill 2.
House Bill 2, sponsored by Representative Heiner. Town Officers Salary Waiver, an act relating to cities and towns. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom was referred House Bill 2, Town Officers Salary Waiver, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zwanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move in committee will rise and report. It does so with a recommendation that House Bill 2 do pass. Now I'll turn the explanation of the bill over to the good representative from District 18.
Representative Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring you this bill and explain a little bit of the background. Last year, one of the towns in my district went through a routine audit. Small communities of less than 4,000 have to be audited every few years. And during that audit, the Department of Audit found out that the mayor was not getting any salary. So that came up as a finding in their audit, because per statute, it says that you have to receive wages. It's on page 1 at the bottom, it says, it starts out, the salaries, this is line 15, the salaries shall be fixed before their terms begin and shall not change during the term for which they are elected. So when this mayor was elected and sworn in, he told the town council that he would not like to receive his wages during his term, which violated this statute, unbeknownst to him. So to resolve that, the city had to pay several years of back pay to that mayor. Now, there's a few solutions to this. Number one option would be for that mayor to make the town council to make a resolution to change his pay. But as we just saw in the statute, you can't change the pay of an elected official during their term of office. So they could have changed his pay for the next term, but coincidentally, he lost the re-election bid, and that would have fixed the wages for the next mayor at zero. Wouldn't have been a good option. Option 2 is for him to donate his wages back to the city, but that creates revenue per IRS. It creates revenue and tax obligations. And as you know, these mayors don't make, and city council don't make very much money, just a few $100s, maybe a couple of $1,000s. So if that would create revenue on this side of the tax form, and if they're still just doing standard deduction on this other side, there's no deduction for that revenue. So it actually creates a taxable event for that elected official. So the easiest thing would be to change statute, and you'll see on page 3, this is what we've attempted to do here, and this is what we propose, or on page 2, excuse me. Page 2, line 10, any elected or appointed officers who are entitled to receive a salary or compensation under this section may elect not to receive the salary or compensation at any time during their term. So pretty simple fix. Mr. Chairman, I have a standing committee amendment that I would like to move at this time.
Representative Heiner, so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move a standing committee amendment number 1 to House Bill number 2. And in that, on page 2, line 12, it changes that a little bit. This is a friendly amendment. It says, any elected or appointed officers who are entitled to receive a salary or compensation under this section may elect, and here's the insert, upon written notice submitted not less than 2 weeks in advance of being paid, to receive, not to receive, and then another portion, all or portion of the salary or compensation at any time during their term. And without any questions, I I call for the question on that amendment.
Members, any discussion? Question being called. All those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 2, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. That amendment is adopted. We are back on the bill. Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Mr. Chairman, I move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 2 and ask for your favorable consideration. This amendment number 1, what it does is it just as the main bill allows the mayor or members of the city council of towns to waive their salary, and that's in this amendment would allow the mayor or city council persons in cities. So basically, if your town has a population of more than 4,000, you're no longer a town, you become a first-class city. So this amendment would allow not only small towns, but also the elected officials of larger cities to do the same thing. I'd ask for your favorable consideration.
Question being called. All those in favor of Representative Stiff's motion for House Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 has been adopted. We are back on the bill. Any further discussion? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Nicholas's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rise to the report, to do so with a recommendation that House Bill 2 do pass. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. House Bill 2 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 93. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 93, sponsored by Water, Omnibus Water Bill Construction, an act relating to water development projects. Mr. Speaker, your Committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred House Bill 93, Omnibus Water Bill Construction, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Hellemand, Aldred, Banks, Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Slagle, Winter. Representative Eklund, Chairman. This bill was re-referred to Committee number 2, Appropriations. Mr. Speaker, your Committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom was referred House Bill 93, Omnibus Water Bill Construction, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stiff, Walters, Zwanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
What is your pleasure, Chairman Eklund?
Mr. Majority Whip, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with a recommendation that House Bill 93 do pass, and I would move the management of that bill over to our new colleague from southwest part of the state that has the great view of the mountain.
Representative Conrad.
Mr. Chairman, I bring to you a House Bill 93 entitled Omnibus Water Bill Construction for your favorable consideration. As a disclaimer and more importantly educational purposes, an omnibus is not an automotive public device designed to carry a large number of passengers, but more importantly, omnibus is a number of items that are pulled together as one. So with that being said, while this bill is approximately 51 pages long, I'd like to explain to the body the major components of this bill. Specifically, it's been a culmination of a great deal of work by a great many people over a number of years, also including the Wyoming Water Development Office. So for the next hour and a half, I'd like to review the bill in detail. All right, specifically, all of you should have received a copy of the omnibus bill in front of you representing the entirety of that. But with expeditious intent here, I want to review specifically or clarify in section 1, which is within the body of the bill, pages 2 through 26 resides our level 2, or rather our level 3 new construction projects. That is approximately 12 total. In section 2, pages 26 through 49 resides the respective amendments to the prior projects. And I would ask favorably if you could reserve your questions till I finish this review of the sections. Section 3, page 49, addresses the transfer of funds. Continue with Section 4, pages 49, specifically again, really articulates the appropriated funds from the general fund to the water development account number 3. Section 5, pages 49 and 50, addresses the application and the award of the funds from the emergency water projects account. And finally, or more importantly, growing near, Section 6, pages 51 through 53, communicates the respective sums of money appropriated from the Legislative Stabilization Reserve account for specific purposes, specifically including Romanettes 1, 2, and 3. Section 7 are statutes that are to be repealed. And finally, those who are still with me, Section 8 is the effective date. I stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Conrad, would you like to move the Standing Committee Amendment number 1? Oh, Chairman Nicholas.
Yeah, I would move standing amendment number 1, the House Bill 94, and I'll provide the explanation. Ladies and gentlemen, they requested $50 million to go into Water 3. We reduced that number down to $15 million, and we just think there's no particular projects that are in line. So to put $50 million in there, to just sit there and not earn interest didn't make sense to us. And our response was that when these damn large projects are up and running, obviously it's time that we step up to the plate, because it's good for water and it's good for saving our water. But there's no reason to preload this before anything happens. So I ask for your favorable consideration on amendment number 1.
Chairman Northrup.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask the good chairman or somebody from who's working the bill, what Water 3 does, and have them explain so everybody's aware of that account.
Chairman Eklund.
So account number 3 is our dams and reservoirs and construction, some of our heavy and expensive construction projects. This is where we draw the money for dams and reservoirs. The $50 million we were hoping would be in that account. The funding to account 3 is fairly small. I'm trying to think, it's about 1.5% of the funding that comes in, so it's less than $1 million that goes into the account. And we can shuffle money around, but we will not have enough money to cover some of the bills. One of them is, I guess, I'm not just answering that question, I'm continuing on as to why we need to probably keep this account as flush as we can. We have the Alkali Creek project. It'll amount to, we hope, only about $25 million to pretty much complete that project. Then we've got a new one coming in they'll be done with the NEPA process pretty soon. And so we don't know when we're going to need the funding, but we would like to have it in there and available. I do believe that the argument that the Appropriations Committee has made, that the amount of interest is insignificant. I believe it's like 0.4% if it sits in account 3. And if it sat in the general fund, it'd be about 1.5%. If it sat in LISRA, it would be 1.8%. And that would be better than what we have, but still the money needs to be available. And I believe the spirit of the committee is good and noble enough, but I've seen how we operate as a body, and the reason I oppose this action to reduce it down from 50 million to 15 million is because we may come back next year and we'll have no money. I've watched this happen, I've said before 3 times, maybe it's more. It just seems like it's every year we come back. We've got a lot of money this year and then we don't have any money next year. And my concern is if we don't have it available, we might not be able to finish some of the major projects that we've got, let alone, and we have other projects. There's probably 200 $200 and some million, maybe at least that amount, in projects that we're working on. We have to work through a NEPA process, and it's fairly difficult, but Wyoming's the only one willing to do it. We're the only state that works hard at putting in new reservoirs. And I think it's a valid argument when we do have a little extra money to make sure we've got the fund as flush as we dare make it. And I don't think 50 million is that out of hand. So I would oppose this amendment and hope we could leave it at 50 million.
Representative Larson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the comments of the good speaker, or the good chairman of agriculture, I think are, I would push back a little bit on a couple of things, and I would just really agree with him on a few points. These water projects are critical to the state, and as we plan and we move them forward, we need to fund them. Some of these projects we've been talking about since I've been in the legislature. And when we set aside that money, and I think there will be my colleague from appropriations to share with you just the amount of money that is a difference is significant. I mean, it's not just a few shekels, it's millions of dollars. To say then that we would not have any money, remember, that's what we created the LSRA for, our rainy day account. So if they come in next year, the year after, and we have $1.5 billion in there, and we need to take 17 million for the Alkali Creek Reservoir, we need 16 million for the Big Sandy Reservoir, or 78 million for the Levitt Reservoir, it's there. It's there, and we can appropriate it, but why rob the ability to generate a few $1 million to have it sitting there was our thinking. So I guess my comment really is to take that fear away that we wouldn't have any money and that these things would just evaporate and go away. We'd have the ability to fund them.
Representative Walters?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the amendment. So moving this money from the LSRA into the water accounts is a different function than when we move money from the LSRA into reserve accounts. When we move money from the LSRA into reserve accounts, we can essentially move all of the stocks with it and we lose no value. Whereas if we move it from the LSRA to the water accounts, we have to move it as cash, and then it only can be invested in the state agency pool. We go from earning about 5.5% interest on average to 1.5% interest on average. So that's roughly a 4% difference. $50 million, that's $2 million a year we cost ourselves simply to park it in the state agency pool or Water 3 in the investment. So while I agree that these projects are great, I think this body, whether it's all of us or anyone else sitting in these chairs, in future years when these projects come forward and are ready to be funded, they're designed and ready, I believe the Wyoming legislature will fund the projects at that time. Until that time, moving this money from the LSRA into the Water 3 account, which then is invested at a far lower rate, is simply costing ourselves millions of dollars each and every year that it sits in that Water 3 account. I'd love to bolster the account, but the way the statute is structured, and this bill is not the mechanism, it cannot be invested for those greater rate of return. For the NEPA processes, the planning, Water 1 and Water 2, the projects on this list that we're already working on in this bill, that's what the Water 1 and Water 2 accounts do. So we can still do the planning, we can still advance these reservoirs, these large construction projects forward, but we don't need to cost the state, cost ourselves millions of dollars just to put money away and feel good. Like I said, I truly believe this legislature, whether it be us or our future members, will fund these projects when they come forward. And currently there are no projects that far along in the process to need this funding at this time. So by making this large and by putting 15 million in there is a gesture of what I would call goodwill towards and saying thank you to the Select Water Committee for all their hard work. But quite frankly, it should probably be zero because it's just costing us great interest dollars for no reason, and we will fund these in the future. Again, on and for the amendment.
Representative Steth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the amendment, just to have a review of how the water accounts work. As you all know from the data book, when you look at the severance tax page, 15.05% of the first $155 million of severance tax every year flows into the water accounts. And because severance taxes are always over 155 million, that means there's a guaranteed flow of $23 million that goes into the severance accounts every year, just like clockwork, without the legislature taking any action at all. So these accounts are essentially refueled every year. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the standing committee amendment? Sensing the urge to vote, all those in favor of standing committee amendment number 1 to House Bill 93, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. No. The ayes have it. That amendment is adopted. We have a committee of the whole amendment on this one. Chairman Eklund, would you please move the amendment?
Mr. Majority Whip, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, no, wrong, on the wrong script, folks. I move amendment number 2, no, amendment number 1, to Committee of the Whole, amendment number 1 to House Bill 93. And I will explain it. Mr. Majority Whip, I'm looking for a compromise. I'm not convinced 15 million will be enough, because we have ongoing projects we have to pay for, along with the possibility of paying for Alkali Creek, which will be 25 million at least to complete that project. We have some other dams and reservoirs we've dedicated money to, and we don't expect to need that before we meet again. The problem we run into is if we need this money ahead of the next session and we don't have something in that account to pay for things, we may not have enough money in the other accounts to shuffle it around, and that is usually done by approval of the legislature to move it from different accounts. So I would move that we raise this, delete the amendment from appropriations of reducing it to 15 million and raise it to 30 million. I'd ask for your favorable support.
Any discussion on the amendment? Representative Harshman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and against the amendment. Members, I think we got to think about, this is the same discussion we had early this morning for lunch, and I think, nothing is more important to Wyoming than water. Maybe our children and our people, and then water. But we had this same discussion, how are you going to save money? And this would go into basically a 1 or 2% account to sit there. And Water 3, I was on committee number 2 when we created that account. There's a lot of Water 3 dreams, but there's nothing out there that's going to need work in the next, and before we come back together again. So to simply take 50 million or 30 million or 15 million and park it in a coffee can for someday, I don't think is good policy. It's going to sit there and earn 1 or 2%. And I get it, water's important, but so are our people. And this is a classic debate. So when you look at Water 1 and Water 2 and you look at this, it's all fully funded. It's a 23 million under the cap severance tax every year. All those projects are taken care of. And to go ahead and stock some of our hard-earned taxpayer money into another coffee can that's not going to draw much, I'd advise against it. And we can come back and we got a Water 3 project next year. Let's fund it. We'll build dams, all for it. But I don't advise this. So on and against the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Speaker Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I have a question for the bringer of the bill, and probably I didn't wake up quick enough. But what all could this Water 3 be used for? So one thing I know as I've been working on the discussions around the Colorado River, and as we're looking at the state's ability to basically purchase the water in Fontenelle to be able to use as a buffer as the river drops and against perhaps curtailment eventually. So my question to the good people on Select Water, and there's a number of you, I suppose there's at least a couple of you in this room, was that discussed about this? Is that part of this? In other words, is Water 3 the account that money was going to be parked in if and when in the very near future the state of Wyoming may need to purchase their options on Fontenelle? So that's my question to the good Chair of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, we're discussing Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 93. Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During the committee hearing, when we looked at this bill for on re-referral, we asked the good chairman and we asked our state agency what projects are out there. And we were not, and we will not be opposed to those, but there wasn't anything coming up between now and the next legislative session that warranted putting that amount of money inside. Now, if I heard wrong, been there before, what I would appreciate from the good bringer of the amendment is if he can provide us with the information that substantiates within the next year that there might be some pending requirements that would require an infusion of money into Water 3, I'm for it. But we didn't see evidence of that, and we asked that in committee hearing, and so I'm still resisting this. And we have 2 more hearings to change our minds on, I think, but I think we need to be a little bit careful as we do that. So that would be my request, is if we could get a little more information, because this planning is out there. Some of these projects have been out there for a long time and we're still not quite there. So having that information at least would be helpful for me, because it wasn't provided when we talked about it.
Representative Ottman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is so amazing to watch as we look at $40 million and $15 and $15 million and all these things. And then we look at the people that really take care of our finances and lead us and guide us in the budget and the amendment process and all of that. It's incredible. But I would also, because I'm not really well-versed in it, but I would ask this. If the chairman of the Select Water is asking for money for projects and has been that chairman for quite a long time, we have massive amounts of snowpack. We can look at different situations around the country and see where there's drought, where reservoirs are being taken out by the federal government, different things like that, where we've had floodings and dams break, and then to say, wait till next year, and if you need some money, we'll appropriate it. Earlier today, we talked about money and how with construction, we need to be doing things because of inflation. So I would just say, rather than let these projects sit and wait when they need to be done and probably get worse, that it may be a good idea to put that money there where it can be utilized. It's not going to be spent if it's not needed. Thank you.
Representative Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to kind of give us some overview of some information I have here on potential dollars that need to be expended. The Alkali Creek Reservoir project is in final design and will most likely need additional funding appropriated on the order of an additional $25 million, which the good chairman brought up. The New Fork Lakes enlargement which is nearing the end of the NEPA, will be looking for construction funding within the next couple of years, and probably to the tune of about 20 million or so, with only about 7 million left unappropriated in the account 3. So we need to be in the range of 35 to 40 million added, and not to mention the funds to keep the other studies going. So that's kind of where we're at, and that's the information from our director of water. So that hopefully will give you some information on the need for this. So 35 to 40 million, we're asking for 30. Come on, folks, we can do this.
Speaker Summers.
On in support of this amendment. The New Fork Lake Dam, obviously that's in my district, and they've been working really hard with the Forest Service on the NEPA for that project. And albeit it's a ways out, right? But are we willing to part with 40 to 60 million all in one lump sum 2 years down the road? We've been in bad times before and then would not pull out of our LISRA to fund some of this stuff. So on in support of this amendment.
Chairman Harshman.
Thank you. Just a question, Mr. Chairman. Just maybe a member of appropriations. This is like a $30 million bill or something, but I don't know if we've all, I mean, it's gone through committee process, but how much is in the ARPA bill? How much water money did we use, one-time money for ARPA? It's tens of millions, I think, that is extra money into these accounts to do more and more projects that we'd never dream of. But I'd like to know how much we're actually spending then. Thank you.
Representative Larson.
Mr. Chairman, just to, off the top of my head on the water and sewer, we had 50 million that we put in of ARPA funds, and then we're putting in an additional 30 million, I believe, on ARPA this year. And I don't have my paper handy. That's just coming off the top of my head. I really appreciate the majority floor leader providing some dates, and I think it confirms the point that I was trying to make earlier. We won't need it before we meet again. And so there's no question that the funding will come. We had a similar situation in an appropriation last year of 23 million for a water project that we feel is really, really important, that we suggested we hold off on because it's still in the engineering phase. It's going to cost us about 2 million a year in savings, but we elected to put it in. And I'm just, as we talk about the ability to earn these revenues and be careful with them, I just think that this is an important conversation, and again, would ask that you resist this for the ability to better fund the state with additional revenue.
Any further discussion? Representative Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there's two projects up in my district that I can think of specifically that have been on hold for a long time. And they come from account 3. And if we were to have to postpone those projects even further, one of them has been 10, 12 years. If we have to postpone it further because we put 15 million instead of 30, which was the projection that we need, 35 to 40, then we're going to make those people wait even longer. So I think 50 would have been great, but our good chairman brought it down to 30, and I think that that's a good agreeable number. So on and for the amendment.
Any further discussion? Sensing the urge to vote. Chairman Eklund.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I can answer a few of the questions. You were kind of firing at me too fast. There has been some offset ARPA funds that were directed for water projects and very necessary funds. And those are taken care of, and they're already there, but they're not available in account 3. So that you'll understand how this is funded, the mineral, it's distributed mineral severance tax. Water development account number 1 is 12.45. That'd be almost $20 million. Account 2 is 2.1. That's a little over 3 million. And then account 3 is only 0.5, and that amounts to less than $1 million. When the account was set up many years ago, it was backfilled by other funds so that there would be enough money to do some large projects. Some of them, other ones that we have, we're rebuilding the Middle Piney Dam in Sublette County. We're enlarging Big Sandy Dam. There's, as mentioned, Alkali Creek, Levitt, and then New Forks is coming in. There's North Fork in Carbon County. All of those will take money. I am concerned about not having enough just for operations, and we don't know when we'll need the 25 million for sure, but we are now sitting at less than $7 million in that account presently. And I would just, 15 million is a little bit slim. I would hope for an aye vote on this amendment.
Any further discussion? Representative Slagle.
Mr. Chairman, I would urge an aye vote on this. I believe this is an issue for the last 200 years almost, or not 200 years, since 1950, our country has built its economy on the back of agriculture. And this projects all benefit agriculture. And if we don't have money in place to get our water projects done, we're just destroying the foundation of our state. So I would urge an aye vote on this.
Any further discussion? Sensing the urge to vote. All those in favor of Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 93, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Division being called. All those in favor, please stand. More than 32. That amendment is adopted. We are back on the bill. There is another amendment. Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to move that when the Committee of the Whole, I would like to move Amendment Number 2 to the Committee of the Whole to House Bill 93, and I will explain the amendment.
Please proceed.
If you look on the last 3 pages of this bill, one thing you'll notice is that legislature is crossed out and SLIB board, State Land and Investment Board, is inserted. So what that essentially does is take all of the oversight of the funds that we're appropriating right here and take it out of this body, if I understand that Section 6 right, takes the oversight out of this body and gives it to the State Land and Investment Board. And so we have debated earlier today the fact that we need oversight of the funds that we're appropriating. As I look through this bill, being a construction guy here with that deals with budgets and things, as I see it, we've got projects that have increased by $11.2 million, $3 million, $25 million, $21.8 million, $30 million. Are you kidding me? Can we not get construction right? I understand now we need infrastructure. I'm all for infrastructure funding. And I know that some of these projects have been in the works for a long time.
But this does not, it seems like we need to clamp down a little bit on our construction process and get a handle on managing the budgets for these projects a little bit better. And that management, I think, should be right here within this body and not necessarily with the State Land and Investment Board. That's what this amendment will do. I ask for your favorable consideration.
Any further discussion? Representative Craigo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and against the amendment. The former speaker sort of made the argument for me. The reason there's all these additional expenditures within the water bill is because we weren't able to act quickly. What these provisions do on page 51 and 52 allow SLIB to make decisions. There's some upcoming decisions made that are necessary to be made in just these three projects because of the timing of them. And so what we're doing is giving SLIB the ability between now and our next legislature to make those decisions so we don't lose money, so we don't have to come back next year and say, oh, by the way, we need more money because we weren't able to act quickly and inflation has made the costs go up even more. On and against.
Any further discussion? Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have promised my constituents we will not have a third year of a special session. And so to not have another special session, please allow the SLIB board to oversee this money because I don't want to come back in this year, as fun as you all are.
Appreciate that. Any further discussion? Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to point out, because this bill can be confusing to read, this is amending last year's water construction bill. This section 6 is. And so just to make sure that everyone recognizes, last year these funds were approved. This is just the final approval to send them out the door. So I just want to make sure everyone is reading the bill correctly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? Chairman Eklund.
Mr. Majority Whip, I'll try to be brief, but because of some of what was said, I think I need to address a few things at least. We have a water development office that's probably second to none in the country, and we're fortunate to have that. The citizens of Wyoming are fortunate to have it. They're guided by two bodies. One is a citizen-led commission. I think there's 5 or 6 commissioners. And then there's a select water committee, 6 members from the Senate, from the House. All of these people do oversight on all of the projects. Water development, briefly, the water development goes through these projects, plans them out really well. It goes to competitive bid, and we're getting the best buy we can. I think you need to understand that a lot of the construction costs have just accelerated on all of us. We're finding it in every phase, whether it's highways, whether it's reservoirs, pipelines, materials, school buildings. All of these costs have escalated, but we, as best we can, we have oversight over the construction costs, and I believe we can defend all of those costs.
Any further discussion? Representative Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, members, you need to read pages 51 and 52 and what these are for and why. One is for securing and acquiring extra capacity in the Fontenelle Reservoir, which is in the upper Green River Basin, which is the upper Colorado River Basin. And I think most of you know what happened last summer when 500,000 acre feet of water was taken out of Flaming Gorge. The green feeds into the Flaming Gorge. We need to acquire that capacity to keep water here. And we've been working with the Bureau of Rec for quite a while. This gives the SLIB, or the State Water Board, same thing, land commissioners, the authority to take that money and act quickly as those come up. The next one is for the Goshen Irrigation project, which I think all of you remember when that failed and lost a lot of water. and became an emergency. The last one is for the LaPrelle Reservoir, which was deemed unsafe 30-some years ago. The Bureau of Reclamation is looking at rebuilding that. It's going to be a lot of money. They want to start soon. So this gives the state share and the ability to use that share as soon as possible. So on and against the amendment, sometimes while things look really good, we need to look at the past and know exactly how we're going to spend this money. And especially for the Fontanelle Reservoir, we need to keep that water here in Wyoming because it's going to be a fight over the greater Colorado River Basin. So on and against the amendment, and if you want more details, I think I can give them to you later.
Sensing the urge to vote. Any further discussion? Question me, Representative Warnock?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to answer a couple of those items. So let me backtrack and just say I'm all for the infrastructure. That's an incredibly important piece of what we've got going and what we're doing. This bill approves infrastructure funding, and it approves it here in this body. We just approved a $30 million contingency fund, essentially, that this body can, well, that somebody can use. So I'm not against the infrastructure piece of things. You know, it's disheartening that these projects in process have increased so much. And it doesn't seem like, it seems like we could manage our construction a lot better that way. I'm asking that we keep the oversight to these funds. That's all I'm asking for, and not take it out to the State Land and Investment Board. We do have funds being allocated for projects, so that's what you know, 50-some pages of the bill does. Anyway, I ask for your favorable consideration for this amendment. Thanks.
Sensing the urge to vote, all those in favor of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 to House Bill 93, say aye. All those opposed, say no. No. That amendment is not adopted. We are back on the bill. Representative Yin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So often we have these cloud seeding projects in the omnibus water bill, and we've seen it in previous years. And I think the question that I had asked in previous years was, do we have data on how much water our money buys us? And so again, I think this year I also want to know, do we have data from the previous projects of the money we spent on cloud seeding of how much water it actually got the state of Wyoming?
Representative Conrad.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, in respect to my colleague who had just asked the question, I'll give you some data, specifically some hard data. From April to July annually, the Medicine Bow and the Sierra Madre areas specifically have received, based on cloud seeding efforts, both ground-based and aerial-based, between 12,000 and 49,000 acre feet annually, or average of 30.5 acre feet in total. With that being said, I need to ensure that everyone knows that when we talk about water seeding, when this omnibus bill, that 37% is being funded by this omnibus bill. The remaining 67 or 60-some% of the cloud seeding efforts are done by respective organizations, respective businesses, and private entities, specifically in the southwest corner. So understand that more than 60% of this cloud seeding efforts, which is producing results, and I will share with you this, that we have began cloud seeding, beginning formally in about 2014. It is not voodoo, it is not an exact science, but it is demonstrating results that are absolutely critical to this issue called the Colorado River Compact of 1922. Again, just for clarification, around 30,000 acre feet a year is directly responsible, or received rather, from cloud seeding, both aerial-based and ground-based. Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Nicholas's motion when the Committee of the Whole rise to the report and do so with the recommendation that House Bill 93 do pass. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. House Bill 93 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 50, Representative Majority Floor Nyman.
Mr. Chairman, I move the Committee of the Whole Rise and Report.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, say no. That amendment is, or that motion is adopted.
The reading clerk will read the Committee of the Whole report.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee of the Whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. House Bill 2, do pass amended. House Bill 93, do pass amended. Representative Western, Chairman.
Just a sec. Majority Whip, Western.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the body adopt the Committee of the Whole report.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Congratulations, Representative Western. Do we have? Messages from the Senate.
Message 150, 150. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below failed to pass the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 22, Wyoming Public Safety Communication System funding. Ayes 13, noes 18. Message 151. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 8, Essential Subsidy Payment to Behavioral Health Centers. Ayes 21, noes 10. Message 152. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 34, Trespass by Small Unmanned Aircraft. Ayes 18, noes 13. Message 153. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 66, School Capital Construction Funding. Ayes 28, noes 3. Message 154. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 79, Plan of Safe Care Newborns. Ayes 31. Message 155. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 91, Creation of Tenancy by the Entirety. Ayes 31. Message 156. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 97, Education Trust Fund Transfer. Ayes 31. Message 157. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 98, Education Certification of Completion. Ayes 31. Message 158. Mr. Speaker, upon reconsideration, the bill listed below failed to pass the Senate third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 22, Wyoming Public Safety Communication System Funding. Ayes 15, noes 16. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
Reports from standing committees.
House Bill 32, sponsored by Education. Education Mill Levy Amendments, an act relating to education. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 4, Education, to whom is referred House Bill 32, Education Mill Levy Amendments, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Allred, Andrew, Berger, Brown, Houston, Lawley, Northrup, Obermueller, Provenza. Representative Northrup, Chairman. House Bill 34, sponsored by Education. School Finance, Mental Health Services. an act relating to school finance. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 34, school finance, mental health services, respectfully report same back to the House with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Sewanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. House Bill 66, sponsored by Representative Ward, prohibiting mask, vaccine, and testing discrimination, an act relating to public health and safety. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred House Bill 66, prohibiting mask, vaccine, and testing discrimination, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Hornock, O'Hearn, Penn, Trujillo, Ward. Noes. Representatives Chadwick, Clouston, Yin, Zwanitzer. Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman. House Bill 70, sponsored by Representative Nyman. Definition of home-based educational program, an act relating to education. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 4, Education, to whom is referred House Bill 70, definition of home-based educational program, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Allred, Andrew, Berger, Brown, Clouston, Lawley, Northrup, Obermuller, Provenza. Representative Northrup, Chairman. House Bill 74, sponsored by Travel, Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund, an act relating to state lands. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 74, Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Sewanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. House Bill 82, sponsored by Representative Larson Lloyd. Defendant Mental Illness Examinations Amendments, an act relating to criminal procedure. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom was referred House Bill 82, Defendant Mental Illness Examinations Amendments, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Chadwick, Clouston, Hornock, O'Hearn, Penn, Trujillo, Ward, Yin, Zwanitzer. Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman. House Bill 90, sponsored by Representative Knapp, Sex Offender Registration Requirements, an act relating to criminal procedure. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred House Bill 90, Sex Offender Registration Requirements, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Crago, Haroldson, Jennings, Nemec, Oakley, Rodriguez-Williams, Washit. Noes. Representatives Chestick, Provenza. Representative Washit, Chairman. House Bill 112, sponsored by Representative Oakley. Theft, penalty for fifth or subsequent offense, an act relating to crimes and offenses. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred House Bill 112, theft penalty for fifth or subsequent offense, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Chestick, Crago, Haroldson, Jennings, Nemec, Oakley, Rodriguez-Williams, Washit. Noes. Representative Provenza. Representative Washit, Chairman. House Bill 134, sponsored by Representative Nemec. Alcohol sales to licensees, an act relating to alcohol. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred House Bill 134, Alcohol sales to licensees, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Chadwick, Haroldson, Harshman, Knapp, Newsom, Olson, Ottman, Wiley, Yin. Representative Olson, Chairman. House Bill 142, sponsored by Representative Western. Notice of annexation, an act relating to cities and towns. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom was referred House Bill 142, Notice of Annexation. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation to do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Chadwick, Haroldson, Harshman, Knapp, Olson, Ottman, Wiley, Yin. Representative Newsom, excused. Representative Olson, Chairman. House Bill 148, sponsored by Representative Walters. Airport liquor licenses agreement, an act relating to alcoholic beverages. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, appropriations, to whom was referred House Bill 148, airport liquor licenses amendment, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zwanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. House Bill 159, sponsored by Representative Larson Lloyd. Department of Fire Protection and Electrical Safety fees, an act relating to fire protection and electrical safety. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom was referred House Bill 159, Department of Fire Protection and Electrical Safety fees, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Banks, Burkhart, Conrad, Heiner, Knapp, Larson, Lawley, Tarver, Western. Representative Burkhart, Chairman.
Re-referrals. It would be Chairman Burkhart, re-referral probably on 159, at least that's what my little note says.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the reminder. I'd like to re-refer 159 to Committee Number 2, Appropriations.
Seeing no objection, House Bill 159 is re-referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. So, Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker,
Please.
I move this House stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Tuesday, the 24th day of January, 2023.
Committee announcements. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your House Appropriations Committee will meet at 8 a.m. on Tuesday to hear House Bill 83, 27, 181, 182, 183, 184, and 185. And those that we don't complete, we will continue on adjournment on the same day. And on adjournment, we'll do any re-referrals at that time.
Vice Chair, no, Chairman Eklund.
Mr. Speaker, your committee number 5, Agriculture, will meet at 7 o'clock on Tuesday morning. We will discuss finish House Bill 22, and then work House Bill 20, House Bill 106, House Bill 79, House Bill 88, House Bill 116, as time allows for us to do it. Those last 4 bills are all sponsored by Ag committeemen, so we'll be there and we'll try to work it that way so we don't, if we have extra time, we won't waste it. We'll probably start the meeting maybe 10 minutes late. There's a breakfast served by the Wyoming Land Trust, and you can grab breakfast and come to the room a little bit late. We'll probably start at 10 after thereabouts.
Thank you. Just one note, so in your mailbox, if you haven't seen it, I'm sure it's in your mailbox, is the budget bill and the summary sheet. So the summary sheet really has all of the kind of requests in it and the changes by Joint Appropriations Committee. So study it and then study the big one. With that, you have heard the Majority Floor Leader's motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. The House is adjourned until 10 a.m. January 24th, 2023.